With that, probably a brief introduction, let me invite to the stage, if I can, our distinguished panelists. And the way we're going to do this, if you can go ahead and come to this stage, each will have a kind of a 10-minute framing of what's top of mind. Then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. I've got some prepared Q&A, and then we'll open it up, if that sounds all right. So please join me in welcoming. So we had a coin flip, or I should say PricewaterhouseCoopers actually counted the votes. Representative Young, if you'd like to start out. You can stand or sit. Okay, that sounds good.
I found out something a long time ago. You sit on your brains, you can't say a whole lot. So I'm standing up. First, I want to acknowledge my wife. She's with me. She's my ocean. She takes care of me. The ocean and what you stand for and what it stands for is something that I've been with most of my life, although I was raised in California on a river, Sacramento River. I went to Alaska to the Yukon River, but along the way I have visited the oceans of the West and the seas of the West. I got interested in this problem for the food aspect. Feeding the world. As you know, Alaska is the largest fishing state in the Union. We manage it with the Magnuson Act, has done well. We have renewed the Magnuson Act on the House side. It's been stalled in the Senate, so if you have any contact with the senators, would you please, I noticed Norm Dick's in the room, and by the way, Norm was a dear friend of mine. We lost him, and I say he did it voluntarily. Of course, I always have to say that why do the good ones leave and the sons of bitches stay behind? And I've been in this business 45 years, so what's that make me? The longest serving Republican, second longest serving Democrat. I have had 9 presidents, and 1,555 members of Congress have served with me. That's a lot of people, doesn't mean anything. And the fact my interest has been the oceans and wildlife and management of. And I think we have to understand the management. Unfortunately, even in this room, you have differences of opinion. I would suggest respectfully there's enough strength in this room and intelligence in this room if we all got together and quit arguing, nitpicking, and wanting your way 100%. Think what we could do with the ocean. Think what we can think about man's activities, which will occur regardless of what we do. Let's do it collectively together. And where man is doing harm, let's help him take and stop doing the harm. Let's not just say no. I'm speaking primarily of the fishing. And my state is probably the largest economic boost to the state. More than that, it feeds an awful lot of people. How do we keep that? We certainly don't keep it by growing salmon in nets. In pens is one of my biggest fight. Our biggest selling point in Alaska for our fish is they're wild. Wild fish instead of raised fish. And some people say we can feed more people if we raise it. Maybe, maybe not. You just saw one of the Tyson's chicken farms lost 137,000 chickens because they got sick. That same thing can happen to fish. So my interest is to make sure that man's recognized, or his role, and how we not only preserve it, but keep it and conserve it and protect it, but provide for it. That's our biggest challenge as far as the Congress goes. I would suggest another thing. I was listening to the gentleman ask the question back here about pollutants. We have talked about that for a long time. And where do we address it? At shore. We can identify it now. We know where most of the large deposits of, I call it refuge, it's located in the seas. And why hasn't somebody, maybe we ought to take all our ocean-related transportation companies, and maybe we ought to think about that and set up a consortium just not to pay for the docks and the harbors, but pay and help create a ship or ships that can go to the spot where that refuge is lying and solve it right there by collecting it and using the plastics for energy to run the ship and the wood to run the ship and salvages the metal that's there floating. Why don't we clean the ocean up? We have not done that as long as man has been on Earth. But it's there and it's growing every day. Some areas as large as 30 miles long and 20 miles wide, floating trash. But I can't find anybody really interested because they don't see it. What man doesn't see, they don't really do anything about. So I'm suggesting an idea that let's clean our oceans. Let's study what we possibly can do because of what has been deposited in the ocean. Let's make sure our ocean is like the prairie of that person that first saw it. My God, it's big. It's not chartered. We really don't know, but we're trying to go to California from Kansas. And they did. And they caused some problems. So I'm asking this consortium to really sort of think out of the box, all hold hands, because that's what we have to do in Congress. That's pretty hard to do in Congress today, I'll tell you that right now. Everybody looks at me and says, I'm a Republican. I'm talking like a liberal. I'm talking about preserving, protecting, and providing for an asset to this nation. It's our oceans. For food, which is crucial as our population grows, for transportation, which is crucial as we do trade, for, frankly, security, it's there. And we have relatively neglected it. I know all of you in this room are very interested. You're working together. You really think you've got it together, and you probably do collectively, but not all together, constructively. And the average person in the street, and that's our biggest challenge, doesn't really care. Really doesn't give a damn. Yet that's what provides them with the security, the food, the minerals. I can go on down the line. And by the way, I want to congratulate David on Eastman and what they're doing. I believe there's a great opportunity there. If we get more people understanding what you're trying to do. I never thought about some of the things you were just mentioning about lightening the weight of a car. My idea was just make it out of aluminum like Ford did, and which they did. But we have other opportunities in this nation how we can provide and produce and to keep science ahead of us. But let's take care of the one thing that provides all to us, and that's the ocean. The water, the food, and the security, and the future all lies in the ocean. My role as a congressman is to make sure I connect with people, listen to people, and try to solve some of these problems together. That's my role as the only congressman from Alaska. I got just as many votes as everybody else. I got more water than anybody else. I can tell you that right now. I have more transportation corridors than anybody else. And I do believe Alaska can solve, with your help, some of those issues I just mentioned: food security, science, and keep our oceans clean. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.